Hi everyone, today I'd like to speak about the pandemic treaty that's been agreed upon by the members in the World Health Organization in Geneva. Now, this has followed intensive negotiations for the past 3 years, and finally the World Health Assembly has agreed to push forward with this, but this will still take a number of months, if not years, before it's brought into action right across many sovereign countries right around the world. Now, this has major ramifications for Ireland in the context of our sovereignty, in the context of human rights, and many more serious issues in terms of the lack of democratic control of the policies of our nation. And what's critically important with this is that this is to work on preparedness for future pandemics. Now, this follows what went on during COVID-19. We saw the disastrous lockdowns and many of those policies that were brought forward on people in terms of vaccine passports in Ireland as well, where it created a two-tier society. We've seen the fallout in the context of lockdowns, the biggest transfer of wealth towards the billionaires in society, and at the same time we've seen the devastating fallouts of delayed diagnoses and missed cancer diagnoses and many more mental health issues. We've seen the last number of days the issues around a lot of people and young children missing school days at record levels. Now, of course, what's been going on with the World Health Organization has been a look to try and go for a power grab in terms of a health power grab, work through the control system of the World Health Organization through global health. And they have this One Health policy as well. And this is interesting because this would have control, for instance, apart from medical, would work in towards agriculture and the environment also. Maybe the Sustainable Development Goals are in play with that. We're well aware of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals with the United Nations, which are, again, another big power grab. And of course, we'll see the censorship that's at play by the World Health Organization. Anybody who goes against the narrative will be silenced, and you know the way that works in our society. I did a video in relation to Michael McGrath with the Institute of International and European Affairs, where he spoke about cutting down on free speech and the freedom of expression. Of course, this is sacrosanct in any society that calls itself democratic. But this will have major ramifications, as I said, because this offers the opportunity for the World Health Organization to mandate preventative medicines. So they can decide themselves what the preventative medicines can be used in various jurisdictions, such as sovereign nations. And of course, what's also fascinating with this is that this will strengthen the legal framework for global response to future pandemics. So it's to strengthen the legal framework. So in terms of this will become mandatory obligations as mandated by the World Health Organization, not by governments that are elected in nations. But again, where is the referenda? Where is the issues of being brought to the people? There's no discussions around this whatsoever. And also, the Director General of the World Health Organization can also decide on what a pandemic is. No proof, just they can decide what a pandemic is and what measures will be in place in terms of the public health emergency of international concern that they will push forward in terms of mandatory quarantine again, testing, vaccine requirements, and issues around border controls as well. So this is a massive power grab, and of course this won't be discussed in any detail in Irish media. But again, this is what's happening while people are getting distracted with many more events domestically. And of course, there's no vaccination liability or so-called vaccination liability for many of these big pharmaceutical companies. And there is issues around surveillance systems and the move towards digital infrastructure. And this ties in with digital currency, a digital ID, digital passport in terms of your medical choices. Doesn't sound too sinister, does it? It doesn't sound too sinister. Let me know in the comments what you think of this. And it's vitally important that people are aware to really what's taking place in Irish society. And of course, what's interesting is Jennifer Carroll MacNeill, the Irish Minister for Health, showed up at Geneva, and of course was seen shaking hands with Mike Ryan, who's been departing from the World Health Organization. Apparently the Labour Party here in Ireland are looking for Mike Ryan to run in the presidential election. They're sounding him out for the upcoming presidential election. And of course Tedros, famous, the Director General of the World Health Organization as well. But MacNeill has always been a fully signed up member of the establishment, was actually Owen Murphy's advisor when he was the disastrous housing minister in Ireland. Of course, he failed upwards in Irish society and became the now Minister for Health. And what's interesting with this is that this would have major ramifications, as I said, for Ireland. But again, nothing to see here with the political establishment or the media. They won't go into this in any sort of detail to discuss really what's taking place. And at the same time, there's a doctor in Ireland called Marcus de Bruin who's now facing a fitness to practice hearing in a number of weeks here in Dublin, because he was one of the doctors that spoke out bravely during the pandemic about his efficacy and issues around the COVID vaccination that was presented, and he wouldn't give it to many of his patients. And of course that's his choice, but again, he was castigated and has been offered by the Irish Medical Council to stop talking about COVID and the lockdowns and stop talking about the nursing homes, and his licence would be reinstated. This is just lunacy, but this is again a silence of people that go against the narrative. Of course, in a democracy you need dissent, you need critique, you need people with dissenting voices and different points of view to formulate their opinion, and regardless of what side of the essentially what side of the spectrum in terms of the debate, it's all incumbent to have those discussions and everybody in society to understand them. But again, this is the way the system works, and through the pandemic treaty, this is one of the agendas to try and silence dissent and control the narrative. And again, and who benefits? Of course, the big pharmaceutical companies who are big investors in the World Health Organization, and of course their revenues increased by over 100% during COVID times, and not to mention companies like Pfizer, the biggest transfer of wealth. There was no indemnity, for instance, on companies, and not to mention we saw the contracts being issued by Pfizer and the conversations that were had in text messages and WhatsApp messages between van der Leyen and Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer. Big business controls the shots, so it's a bigger power grab. So it's not fundamentally about giving and helping poorer countries to access to proper medicines. It's essentially about more control. And of course, Micheál Martin met Tedros last year and offered over €19.5 million of Irish public money in a 3-year deal to the World Health Organization. Of course, the US have pulled out from it, so let's see how this develops over the next period of time. But it's important to spread awareness to really what's going on in society. We should all be saying no to this. Contact anybody you know around this and get this message out far and wide to start having this conversation beyond the social media platforms into our normal conversation groups and whatever people we know, to get this message out far and wide. So I appreciate it, and please subscribe to my channel. So from Dublin tonight, slán and take care.